The first time I met Karen, she was standing in my driveway, hands on her hips, clipboard in hand, acting like she owned the entire neighborhood. I had just moved into my new home 2 weeks earlier, a quiet little house on the edge of a lake, with tall oaks shading the front yard. It wasn't part of any home. That was one of the main reasons I bought it. I wanted peace, freedom, a place where I could garden without violating community standards. But Karen didn't see it that way. She marched right up to me that morning, her oversized sunglasses reflecting the sunlight and her voice sharp enough to cut through steel. "Excuse me," she snapped, pointing at my freshly planted mailbox. "That mailbox does not comply with the HOA's design code. You'll need to replace it within 10 days or face a fine." I blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, what? I'm not in your home." Karen laughed in one of those condescending, nasally laughs that make you instantly dislike someone. "Oh, that's cute. Everyone in this area is under the Lakeview Estates home. You must have missed the memo." I pulled out my closing documents later that day just to double check. Nope, I was right. My property was never annexed into the HOA. It sat just outside their jurisdiction, a technicality that clearly drove her insane. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, I came home from work to find a bright orange paper taped to my front door. Notice of violation. Apparently, my grass was too tall, and my trash bins were visible from the street. Both laughable, since I cut the grass just 3 days earlier and my bins were tucked neatly behind a fence. Karen had also written, in neat cursive letters at the bottom, "Greater than further non-compliance will result in legal action." That's when I realized she wasn't just being petty, she was obsessed with control. So I went over to the HOA's next public meeting. They held it in the community clubhouse, a place I technically didn't have access to, but since I wasn't breaking any laws by attending, I walked right in. When Karen saw me, her eyes narrowed. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "Oh, I belong anywhere public," I said calmly, "and I'd like to clear up some confusion. My home isn't part of this home. I've got the deeds and county maps to prove it." The room went quiet. A few people looked embarrassed. Others looked curious. But Karen wasn't backing down. "You can't just opt out," she snapped. "Everyone in Lakeview is under our jurisdiction. We voted on it years ago." I raised an eyebrow. "You can't vote someone's private property into an HOA without their consent. That's illegal." Her face turned red. "We'll see about that." And that's when things escalated. A month later, I was served papers. Karina, on behalf of the Lakeview Estates Homeowners Association, was suing me for non-compliance with HOA bylaws and unpaid dues totaling $2,700. I nearly laughed out loud. She was trying to charge me fees for an organization I never agreed to join. But laughter turned into frustration when I realized I'd have to fight this in court. I hired a lawyer, Mark, who specialized in property and HOA disputes. When he saw the paperwork, he actually chuckled. "This woman just opened Pandora's box," he said. "She has no legal standing to enforce anything on your property." But what's interesting, a broken bar, is that she may have just given us grounds to challenge the entire home. I wasn't sure what he meant at the time, but I was about to find out. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. It seemed like half the neighborhood showed up, some to support Karen, others just for the drama. Karen sat proudly in the front row, surrounded by her HOA board members. She wore a blazer, pearls, and that smug smile she always had when she thought she'd already won. The judge, a stern but fair woman named Judge Harris, began the proceedings. Karen's attorney stood first, talking about community standards, binding covenants, and unified governance. Then Mark stood. He pulled out a stack of documents, of property plats, county zoning records, and the original HOA incorporation papers. "Your Honor," he said, "this case isn't about unpaid dues. It's about abuse of authority. My client's property, Lot 47A, was never annexed into the Lakeview Estates home. In fact, none of these homeowners have a legally valid covenant recorded with the county. The HOA itself was never properly registered after the original developers dissolved their company 15 years ago." You could hear a pin drop. Karen looked around, confused. "That's not true," she stammered. "We've been running this community for years. We have rules, dues, and meetings." Mark interrupted her smoothly. "You had a homeowners club, Miss Karen, note a legally recognized homeowners association. You've been collecting money and enforcing regulations under a dissolved entity. That's fraud. Karen's mouth fell open. The judge leaned forward. Is this true? The county records clerk who Mark had subpoenaed confirmed it. The HOA's corporate status had expired over a decade ago. They had no authority to collect dues, no legal rights to enforce rules, and no claim over any property. For a long moment, the judge said nothing. Then she looked at Karen and said, firmly, greater than not only does this case have no merit, but the so-called HOA has been operating unlawfully. Effective immediately, I am dissolving any remaining claim of authority this organization asserts. Case dismissed. The room erupted. Some homeowners cheered quietly. Others whispered in disbelief. Karen sat frozen, her face paled, eyes wide, like someone had just pulled the rug out from under her entire world. I didn't gloat. I just turned to her and said, you should have just let me have my mailbox. After the ruling, word spread quickly. The HOA that had terrorized residents for years was officially gone. People who'd been fined thousands for petty violations were relieved. Neighbors started repainting their homes the colors they actually wanted. Some even threw a small block party to celebrate Freedom Day. As for Karina, she moved out 3 months later. I heard she tried to start another HOA in a nearby neighborhood, but after what happened, no one wanted anything to do with her. It's funny how one person's need for control can turn into a nightmare for everyone else. But it's even funnier how they try the quiet, steady, and well-documented can tear that control apart in a single courtroom session. I still live in that house by the lake. My mailbox stands tall, just as I built it. The grass grows free, the garden blooms bright, and no one's left sticky notes on my door since. Every time I see that old spot where the home meeting sign used to stand, I smile. It reminds me of a simple truth: power built on lies always collapses. And sometimes, all it takes is one ordinary homeowner with the courage to stand up and say, "Number